The lawyer's voice trembled slightly as he unfolded the final page of my grandmother's will. The tension in that office could have cracked glass. Everyone was waiting. My Uncle Vernon, his perfect children Preston and Bianca, their spouses, even the family accountant pretending not to enjoy the show. I was the last to arrive, still wearing my wrinkled teacher's shirt. My car had broken down again, and I jogged the last few blocks just to be there on time. Mr. Hutchinson, the lawyer, cleared his throat. To Preston Whitmore, he began. I leave the Miami penthouse and its adjoining property. Preston smirked, already texting someone under the table. To Bianca Whitmore Kent, I leave the Palm Beach estate and the family art collection. Bianca smiled politely, though her husband's grin was anything but. And to Raymond Arthur Whitmore, his voice softened, I leave my 1952 Singer sewing machine, model 221, stored in the attic. Silence. Then laughter. Preston actually clapped. A sewing machine? That's perfect. The teacher gets something educational. Bianca added sweetly, maybe you can make curtains for your apartment. Uncle Vernon smirked, pretending not to laugh. Your grandmother always said you were the practical one. I didn't reply. My throat felt tight, but I smiled like it didn't hurt. Grandma Dorothy had always been kind to me. She visited my small apartment when everyone else forgot I existed. She told me stories about my dad, her son, Arthur, the one who died when I was 20. But she'd also been clever. The kind of woman who hid meaning in every word. So I couldn't believe this was all she'd left me. After the reading, the lawyer pulled me aside. Raymond, he said softly, your grandmother asked me to give you this. He handed me a small brass key tied to a faded blue ribbon. It was old, antique, like something from a jewelry box. That night, I sat alone in my apartment turning it over in my hand. What could a sewing machine mean? The next morning, curiosity got the better of me. I drove to Grandma's old mansion. The property was already half emptied. Boxes stacked, furniture wrapped, the echo of a home being erased. I climbed the narrow attic stairs. Dust hung in the air like frozen time. And there it was, the sewing machine. Black enamel, gold trim, perfectly polished. A tiny tag was tied to the handle. For Raymond. Handle with care. I brought it home, thinking maybe she'd left a message hidden in it, or maybe it was just sentimental. But that night, when I tilted it to clean the base, I noticed one of the bottom plates was loose. I removed a screw and something slid out. A small envelope yellowed by age. My name was written on the front in her familiar handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. My dearest Raymond, if you're reading this, the vultures have already taken what they thought mattered. But what they wanted was built on lies. The truth was never meant for them. The sewing machine is only the beginning. Look where the roses never bloom. The truth about your father's death lies there. The combination is his real birthday, not the one Vernon tells everyone. Be careful who you trust. All my love, Grandma D. My stomach twisted. The truth about my father's death? Everyone said it was an accident, a boating trip gone wrong. He fell overboard and drowned. But Grandma's tone. She was warning me. That night I couldn't sleep. Her words kept looping in my head. Look where the roses never bloom. Then I remembered, in Grandma's backyard, there was a row of roses along the greenhouse. Except one patch, one square of soil where nothing ever grew. At midnight, I grabbed a flashlight and a shovel. When I reached the garden, the moonlight cast everything in silver. I crouched near the dead patch and started digging. Minutes passed. Then clink. My shovel hit metal. A small lockbox, rusty but intact. On the front, a dial lock. I knew it, the combination had to be my father's real birthday. But I didn't know what that was. Uncle Vernon always said March 3rd, 1965. But Grandma's note said, not the one Vernon tells everyone. I brushed dirt off the box, my heart racing. Whatever was inside, it was the reason she left me this clue. And I was going to find out. I didn't sleep that night. I placed the small lockbox on my table and just stared at it, my mind running wild. My grandmother's words echoed through my head. The truth about your father's death lies there. The combination is his real birthday, Not the one Vernon tells everyone. For hours I replayed childhood memories, searching for clues. I remembered the old family portrait that used to hang in Grandma's hallway. There was a plaque under it, Arthur L. Whitmore, born February 3, 1965. That was it. February, not March. I turned the dial slowly. 0, 2, 0, 3, 6, 5. Click. The lid creaked open, releasing a faint smell of old paper and rust. Inside lay a small black notebook, a sealed envelope, and an old cassette tape wrapped in tissue. My heart hammered in my chest as I unfolded the letter. Raymond, if you found this, you are braver than I ever was. I've kept quiet for years, but silence is poison. What you will find in this box may destroy everything you know about your family, but it will set you free. Grandma Dorothy. My fingers shook as I reached for the notebook. It was filled with her handwriting, neat, deliberate, almost mechanical in its precision. Each page contained names, dates, and transaction codes from Whitmore Textiles, our family's manufacturing business. But one name appeared over and over again. Vernon. At first, I didn't understand. Then it hit me. She'd been tracking money. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, quietly moved, redirected, hidden. It was a paper trail, one she'd been following for decades. And the last few pages, they changed everything. Arthur confronted Vernon about the missing accounts. He threatened to go to the board. That night, they went out on the boat. Only one came back. My stomach twisted. I shut the book, breathing hard. Could it really be true? Had my uncle, my father's own brother, done something to him? I didn't want to believe it. But the more I thought about the way Vernon always changed the subject whenever my father's name came up, the more sense it made. The cassette tape was my last hope for clarity. I didn't even own a cassette player anymore, but I remembered one in the school storage room where I worked. The next morning, I snuck into the building before classes started. The old tape deck wheezed as it came to life, its motor whining before steadying. I pressed play. My grandmother's voice filled the room, calm but tired, each word carrying the weight of truth. Raymond, if you're hearing this, it means they've already taken everything that looks valuable. But what's truly valuable is the truth. Your father didn't drown. He discovered that Vernon was draining company funds to cover personal debts. He confronted him. They fought. Arthur fell, but not into the water. There was blood on the deck. Vernon used the storm that night as his cover. He told the police your father slipped overboard. The truth was buried, and I let it happen because I was afraid. But I couldn't leave this world without telling you. My hand froze over the stop button. I could hardly breathe. The tape continued, her voice trembling now. I kept the evidence hidden in case someone ever questioned it. The notebook is your proof. Don't let fear run your life like it ran mine. You are your father's son, he had courage. Find yours. I sat there in silence for a long time. The old fluorescent lights flickered above me. Everything I thought I knew about my family was gone. My father hadn't died by accident. He'd been silenced. That evening, I returned home. But the moment I pulled into the parking lot, my gut tightened. A black SUV was parked across the street. Tinted windows, engine running. It looked too familiar. Then came the knock on my door. 3 sharp bangs. Raymond, a voice said. Low, firm. My uncle's voice. I froze. I didn't answer. Open the door, he said again, more forcefully this time. We need to talk. My hand hovered over the lock. Then instinct kicked in. I grabbed the box, the notebook, the tape, everything, and bolted out the back door. I ran through the alley, my breath coming in sharp bursts. My car was useless. He'd find me too easily. So I just ran. By the time I reached the old Riverdale motel, my lungs felt like fire. I paid cash for a room and locked myself inside. For the next 2 days, I stayed there, curtains drawn, barely sleeping. When I finally gathered the courage, I called the only person I thought I could trust. Mr. Hutchinson, Grandma's lawyer. We met early the next morning in a quiet diner off the highway. He looked startled to see me. Raymond, my God, you look awful, he said. I found something, I told him, sliding the notebook across the table. He read a few pages, then stopped. His eyes widened. Where did you get this? The garden. Grandma left me a clue. It's her handwriting, isn't it? He nodded slowly, scanning the figures. These are internal transfer records, offshore accounts. And look, Vernon's signature. This is criminal evidence. I swallowed hard. And the tape. She says my father's death wasn't an accident. Mr. Hutchinson looked at me, the weight of what I'd said hanging between us. If this is true, he said, we can't keep it quiet. I can contact the district attorney. But Raymond, you need to understand something. This will destroy your family's name completely. I looked down at my hands. Rough, tired, honest hands. I think that name destroyed itself a long time ago. He nodded once. Then we do this right. For the next week, we worked in secret. Copies were made of the notebook, the tape was digitized, and an anonymous report was sent to the authorities. Days later, the storm broke. Headlines flashed across every news site. Whitmore Industries under federal investigation. CEO Vernon Whitmore accused of decades-old financial fraud. Possible new evidence reopens suspicious death of Arthur Whitmore. The mansion was sealed off. The accounts frozen. And Vernon, the man who had smiled as he stole from his own brother, was taken away in handcuffs. I didn't feel victory, just a deep, trembling quiet. The cousins who once laughed at me vanished overnight. Preston was caught in the crossfire. He'd been helping move money overseas. Bianca tried to claim ignorance, but the records had her signature too. The entire empire crumbled. A week later, I got a letter in the mail from the Attorney General's office, confirming that the case against Vernon had been reopened, this time for manslaughter. The truth finally was out. I drove back to Grandma's house that evening, or what was left of it. The rooms were empty now, quiet, but it didn't feel sad anymore. I walked to the garden one last time. The roses still refused to bloom in that one square of earth. Until now. Tiny green buds were pushing through the soil. I knelt beside them, whispering, I did it, Grandma. A breeze passed through the trees, and for a moment, I swear I could smell her lavender perfume. The next morning, I turned the old sewing machine back on. The sound of its motor was soft, steady, like a heartbeat. I finally understood why she left it for me. It wasn't just a reminder. It was a message. Mend what's been torn. And that's exactly what I plan to do. It's strange how quiet a house can be after the noise is gone. The shouting, the greed, the arguments. All of it fades, and what's left behind is just silence. That's what I felt walking through my grandmother's mansion one last time. The echoes of laughter that wasn't real. The smell of old money and secrets. And the weight of a story that had finally come to an end. It had been 6 months since the investigation started. My Uncle Vernon was sitting in a federal prison cell, awaiting sentencing. Preston was charged as an accomplice in financial fraud. Bianca had turned herself in and agreed to cooperate in exchange for leniency. The Whitmore name, once printed on every textile tag across the East Coast, was now just a cautionary tale on the evening news. And me? I went back to the classroom for a while. Teaching felt safe, predictable. I didn't want to think about money or inheritance anymore. But life doesn't just pause because you're tired of it. One evening after class, Mr. Hutchinson called. Raymond, he said, the court has finished sorting through the estate. You need to come by tomorrow. The next day, I sat in his office, that same wooden table where the will had been read months ago. He slid a folder toward me. The assets have been liquidated, he said. After legal fees, restitution payments, and settlements, there's not much left. But your grandmother's personal accounts were separate from the company. She left those untouched. I opened the folder. Inside was a bank statement with my name on it, and a note in her handwriting. For Raymond. To build, not to buy. It wasn't millions, but it was enough. Enough to start something new. That night, I sat by the window with the sewing machine in front of me. I ran my hand across its smooth black enamel. The gold lettering still gleamed faintly under the lamplight. I remembered Grandma's voice, steady, patient, Everything broken can be mended, Raymond. It just takes time and care. And that's when it clicked. The Whitmore name didn't have to end in scandal. Could mean something again, something good. So I made a decision. 1 year later, the old Whitmore textiles factory had been abandoned for nearly a decade. Windows shattered, roof leaking. But when I stood before it, I didn't see a ruin. I saw potential. Using Grandma's inheritance, I bought it outright and began restoring it piece by piece. I hired local carpenters to fix the floors, painters to wash away the grime, electricians to bring back the light. Then, one morning, I walked into a small fabric store downtown and placed a flyer on the counter. The Dorothy Project, a community workshop for local seamstresses, designers, and artists. Free space. Open soon. First, no one came. Then a few curious faces showed up. Women who had once worked under my grandmother. A retired tailor. A student studying fashion. By summer, the old factory buzzed with life again. The whir of sewing machines filled the air, dozens of them, including Grandma's 1952 Singer, placed right at the center. The first product we made wasn't clothing or upholstery. It was a quilt. A massive one, stitched together from scraps people brought in from their homes. Old curtains, torn jeans, shirts with memories. When it was done, we hung it on the wall in the main hall. A patchwork of stories. Imperfect, colorful, beautiful. Every person who came through that door added something to it. That quilt became our symbol. A few months later, an article appeared online titled, "From Scandal to Hope, the Man Who Rebuilt the Whitmore Legacy." Reporters started visiting. Local news did a feature. Donations came pouring in. But what mattered most wasn't the recognition, it was the people. One day, a woman in her 60s came to the workshop. She had calloused hands and a tired smile. "You don't know me," she said, "but I worked for your grandmother for 20 years. She used to visit us on Fridays. Brought us sandwiches, tea. She'd sit by the machines and tell stories about her sons." My throat tightened. "She never told me that." She said, the woman continued, "that your father was the kindest man she ever knew. Said he believed good work outlasts good luck." For a long moment I couldn't speak. I just nodded. That night I stayed late at the workshop. The last light burned above Grandma's old Singer. I sat in front of it, running fabric through the needle, the rhythmic hum filling the empty space. And I realized this sound, this simple act was my inheritance. Not the money, not the property, but purpose. The same one my grandmother and father shared. Months passed. The Dorothy Project grew. We partnered with local schools, offered free classes, taught kids how to sew and repair their own clothes instead of throwing them away. People who'd lost jobs found dignity again through their hands. And every time I saw someone sit at a sewing machine for the first time, nervous, unsure, I saw a reflection of myself. One afternoon, a little girl named Ellie came up to me holding a crookedly stitched piece of cloth. "It's not perfect," she said, pouting. I smiled. "Neither is life. That's what makes it beautiful." She giggled and ran off. I stood there, watching her join her mother, feeling something warm settle in my chest. A kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. 2 springs later, I finally went back to the garden behind Grandma's mansion. The house had been sold, but the new owners let me visit whenever I asked. The soil where I'd found the lockbox was different now. Green, rich, full of life. And the roses, they were blooming, bright red, fierce, alive. For a while, I just stood there, the wind rustling through the petals. "I wish you could see this," I whispered. But maybe she could. Maybe, in her own quiet way, she always knew that this, not wealth, not property, would be her true legacy. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A small, rusted plaque at the base of the rose patch. I brushed off the dirt. It read, "Where truth is planted, beauty grows." My chest tightened. That line wasn't new. She used to say it when I was a boy, whenever I broke something and tried to hide it. Now I finally understood. Truth doesn't destroy, it heals. It roots deep, even in ruined soil. That night, I returned to the workshop for our first anniversary celebration. The place was alive with laughter, music, and the steady hum of sewing machines. On the wall, beneath the big patchwork quilt, I hung Grandma's sewing machine plaque, in memory of Dorothy Whitmore, who taught us that hands can heal what hearts cannot. As the lights dimmed, I stood before the crowd, workers, students, families, people who'd lost and rebuilt just like me. I took a deep breath. This, I said, is what she wanted us to remember, that no matter what we inherit, pain, mistakes, or even a broken name, we can choose what to make of it. We can sew something new. The room fell silent for a moment. Then applause broke out, warm, real, unforced. I looked at the old singer in the center of the room, its golden trim glowing softly in the light. And for the first time since the will reading, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. Because I finally understood what my grandmother's gift really was. It wasn't a machine. It was a second chance to create, to forgive, to begin again. Years later, when people ask me about my inheritance, I tell them the truth. My cousins got mansions, I say, smiling. I got a sewing machine. They laugh, thinking it's a joke. But I always add quietly, and that machine gave me back my life.